What if I told you that even ordinary people can be on top of the world?
The first attempt on the North Pole by a team of women gets underway today.
The epic adventure will take them over 1,000 kilometres of hazardous sea ice.
It's thousands of miles of ice and nobody.
And so I found myself walking into this water and then sinking up to my neck.
I honestly thought I was going to die in the Arctic.
The all-new 30 for 30 podcast. Subscribe now on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts.
30 for 30 podcast is presented by Mini. We're finding the best sports stories for you right now. And to do that, we're behind the wheel of the new Mini Countryman, the biggest Mini yet.
Please proceed to the highlighted route.
To find great sports stories, you have to get out into the world and follow your instincts. That's where the new Mini Countryman's all-wheel drive comes in handy. With all four, we can chase down a story in the city, the country, and most places in between. No matter what story you're chasing, the new Mini Countryman will help you find it. It's available now, and so are 30 for 30 podcasts.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airways of ESPN Radio. That's 710 ESPN LA. It's 98.7 FM New York City. And, of course, nationwide over the airways of ESPN Radio. Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. This is the last weekend of preseason football. It is the first weekend of the college football season. Obviously, Alabama going up against Florida State is a big-time game. Number 1 ranked versus number 3 ranked team in the nation. There's Michigan and Florida going up against one another. That's an afternoon game. Looking forward to seeing that, even though I don't know what the hell to say about either of those teams. Michigan lost 10 starters. Florida State suspended them. You know, so, I mean, who the hell's going to be on the field for these two teams? That's going to be interesting to discuss. USC, this season begins. Can't wait to see what Donald looks like this year and whether it's legitimate that he's the number 1 contender for the Heisman Trophy. We're going to talk about all of that today as the show progresses. We'll definitely get into the Kyrie Irving trade to Boston being official, along with his comments this morning in Boston at an 11 a.m. press conference, Eastern Standard Time, of course. So we'll hear what he had to say about why he elected to depart from Cleveland. I think you'll find some of his comments relatively interesting, to say the least. We'll get into that. But the obvious news for the day, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to get into some stuff in regards to the Ball family, in regards to the Lakers and the $500,000 fine. I'll get into all of that. Plus, I'm going to talk about CC Sabathia for the Yankees going off about the Boston Red Sox and you know, rife with expletives and all of this other stuff. It's going to be interesting to talk about that as well, particularly with the Major League Baseball playoffs approaching. The Dodgers obviously are the favorites, but the Astros picked up Verlander and how that's going to resonate throughout Major League Baseball circles. Doesn't have much to do with the Dodgers in the National League, by the way. But it could have something to do with them if they end up advancing to the World Series, I'll tell you that much. All of that stuff and more will be interesting things to talk about. But first order of business is this news involving Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, essentially, you've got the Players Association petitioning to stall this 6-game suspension handed down to Ezekiel Elliott by the commissioner's office and and Commissioner Roger Goodell. Essentially, there was somebody in the room, a part of the investigative team for the NFL. Her name was Kia Roberts. And supposedly she was willing to recommend that Ezekiel Elliott not be suspended at all because the alleged victim, Ms. Thompson, was not credible. Tiffany Thompson, I believe her name is, was not deemed credible by this person. But she was never in the room when the decision was made, never had the opportunity to speak to Roger Goodell directly. So now these things get quite interesting because the Players Association is going to attack the process. They're going to attack the process exacted by Commissioner Roger Goodell and the National Football League. They're going to talk about how unfair it is and how an independent counsel needs to oversee the proceedings. Basically, a special master. Basically, the kind of things they had in previous collective bargaining agreements, but don't have in this one. But I won't get on that soapbox just yet. What I'll do is read from various articles, in this particular one from NFL.com, Tom Pelissero. He writes, the NFL denies hiding critical information about the Ezekiel Elliott case and other assertions made in a petition filed Thursday by the NFL Players Association, which is seeking to prevent the league from enforcing any suspension for the Dallas Cowboys star running back. The NFLPA's request, filed Thursday night in U.S. District Court in Texas, alleges the forthcoming ruling by appeals officer Harold Henderson, who heard this week Elliott's appeal of his 6-game suspension for violating a personal conduct policy, is based on an appeal process that has, quote, deprived the union and Elliott of fundamental fairness. Among other things, the petition alleges the league deliberately hid critical information from Elliott and that the union could have been used to exonerate him, including that the NFL's lead investigator on the case, Kia Roberts, found the woman who accused Elliott was not credible and there was insufficient corroborating evidence to support any discipline. Quote, they're trying to create a grand conspiracy story where none exists. This according to league spokesman Joe Lockhart to NFL.com today. Lockhart also disputed key aspects of a report by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on Thursday that Lisa Friel, the league's senior vice president of investigations, barred Roberts from the meeting in which Friel recommended a 6-game suspension to Commissioner Roger Goodell, and that Roberts testified in the appeal hearing that she recommended no discipline. The league is going to dispute that. Here's my point, because this is where it gets interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, when you are empowered, particularly at a in a high-ranking decision-making position, you have subordinates. You allocate responsibility to them. They come to you with reports, and that is that. And the layers beneath them, they deal with. You don't have to deal with stuff on that level because power trickles from the top on down. I understand that. So in a case, what I'm alluding to is if Kia Roberts is the lead investigator and she's answerable to Lisa Friel, and Lisa Friel is the one that presented the evidence to Roger Goodell, it may very well be that her recommendation was heard. It may very well be that Lisa Friel articulated and elocuted that position properly to Roger Goodell. But if you are the commissioner of the National Football League, particularly when it comes to domestic violence related issues and your history in judging the significance or lack thereof of these incidences in question, I would think it would behoove Roger Goodell to meet with Kia Roberts. Even if Lisa Friel needed to be in the room, if I'm Roger Goodell, I want to see Kia Roberts. I want to hear her speak about the alleged victim along with her credibility. You know why? Because she's the only person that spoke to the alleged victim. I want that person in front of my face. I want to have a direct correspondence with that person. I don't need a go-between at that particular moment. Lisa Friel, as capable as she may be, and as much as she may have articulated her position, and that position of Kia Roberts, the Commissioner Roger Goodell, I still want to see Kia Roberts if I'm Roger Goodell. Now, that may not be enough to get Ezekiel Elliott off. Harold Henderson is going to make that judgment call. And who knows, he might reduce the suspension in half. And if that happens for Ezekiel Elliott, he better take it and run. Don't be prideful. This ain't the time. Take it and run with it. If the suspension is lessened, thank your heavenly lucky stars and be done with it. We can slice it any way we want to, ladies and gentlemen. It's domestic violence. Like I told you. Remember when Ed Bradley interviewed Michael Jackson? And he said, as we still sit here today, do you still think it is okay for a 45-year-old man to be sleeping in the bed with little boys? And Michael Jackson said, of course. Not if you're a predator. Not if you're a murderer. Not if you're Jack the Ripper, which I am not. That's what he said. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. That's still one of the funniest interviews I ever saw in my life. We ain't thinking about Michael Jackson's guilt or innocence. We're thinking about the fact that ultimately he had to settle because he didn't want it in the news. And it was going to be in the news no matter what. And there's so much you can do to sway public opinion because even if people side with you, sometimes they're so damn cruel they don't even want to admit it. So they harass you and antagonize you and irritate you on purpose, knowing you might be right. In other words, Ezekiel Elliott ain't winning in the court of public opinion no matter what he does. Try and get the suspension reduced. And after that, be on your merry damn way. It's that simple. It ain't that complicated.
Want to be a part of the show? Hit Stephen A. up weekdays from 1 to 3 Eastern at 866-729-3776.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
See, one of the things that we have to sit up there, we have an obligation to bring this up. Ladies and gentlemen, I swear to you, I can't wait to start talking about the actual games. I can't wait. This whole stuff just has disgusted me to no end. Who the hell wants to start the football season talking about domestic violence? And another appeals hearing. The same damn thing happened last year with the Deflategate thing. Obviously, it was far more serious now than it was then. But what I'm saying is that we're talking about Roger Goodell, the NFL, and the courts. So I know that entices us all to point the finger at Roger Goodell because he doesn't handle things as well as he should. Fair enough. But you know where the problem really lies with us? How about demanding to hear from Ezekiel Elliott and his side whether or not he's innocent? To this day, he has never uttered the words, "I'm innocent of this. I am not guilty." Ladies and gentlemen, as much as it might aggrieve so many people, because the case ended up getting settled and all of this other stuff, I will remind y'all years ago when Kobe Bryant was accused and he sat on that podium next to his wife, embarrassed and ashamed and sullied. That's what some of y'all peeled from it. Because, oh my Lord, how anybody, infidelity and all of that, it's none of my damn business. I don't know what's going on in people's bedroom. Don't want to know. You know what I heard from Kobe? I'm innocent. I did not do this. I haven't heard that from Ezekiel Elliott. I haven't heard it. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it's egregious as it appeared to be because all the evidence pointed to something else, Greg Hardy said he was innocent. I mean, damn. I mean, the woman's got bruises on her body. She described being thrown on a bed full of a futon bed full of rifles, having him grab her by the neck, slammed her arm on a toilet bowl, threatened to kill her. He said, "I don't know what she's talking about. I'm innocent." I mean, we even heard it from him. I haven't heard Ezekiel Elliott say that. And I guess the bigger question that I have for y'all is, what's the bigger crime? Roger Goodell's apparent ineptitude and with decision-making as it comes to issues of this matter? Or is the bigger crime the fact that we, the media and the public, is focused more on that than Ezekiel Elliott and his innocence or guilt, because he clearly hasn't crystallized it for us. Why are we putting Roger Goodell on trial more than we putting on Ezekiel Elliott on trial? Why are we doing that? I'm just asking. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call. This 866-729-3776. LeVar Ball, Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, LiAngelo Ball, all of these balls, the Ball family, coming out with their own reality TV show. And then you got a shoe for the little brother, Lonzo. Was it LaMelo or LiAngelo? Who's the one that got the new shoe? LaMelo. 16 years old. My initial response is I don't like it. Think it's too much for a kid, blah, 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 blah. Here's where I have to shut up. There's some teenage golfers out there who've received some shine. Tiger Woods was getting shine before he went on the PGA Tour or the golf circuit. Excuse me. We see 16-year-old tennis phenoms. We hear about them in hockey and baseball, too, by the way. I mean, Bryce Harper was receiving homeschooling. Wasn't even going to school with the regular folks. We didn't care about his interpersonal relations and all of this other stuff. No, he could play baseball. And he was going pro. And now he's in position, when healthy, to sign for about $400+ million. So guess what? I can't fault the LeVar Ball family for going for theirs. This is America after the way. By the way. Land of the free home for the brave. Land of opportunity. He's trying to maximize his. How can I fault him for that? 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. Let's go to James in North Carolina. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, James?
Hey, Stephen A. How you doing, bro?
I'm all right. Go ahead.
A lot of people complain about Roger Goodell, but I remember something you said, it's been a couple months ago. The Players Association gave him that power. And
10 years.
And now this is what's happening. Everybody wanted to settle so quick. Let's go back to playing football. Let's give Mr. Goodell what he wants, and we'll get what we want. And now look at what happened. Now I'm not calling him a tyrant, but basically whatever he says goes, no matter what happens out there in the public. Now, I think, from a legal perspective, maybe just like the attorney said, maybe there's nothing there. But with the pictures and things out there in the court of public opinion, we have an issue. And this is where Roger Goodell is probably operating, because the NFL is a business. More than we can talk all we want to about enjoying playing the sport and all of this, but the NFL is still a business. The shield is what's at stake, and that's where Goodell is coming from, in my opinion. I might be wrong.
No, that's definitely where he's coming from. He's going to protect the shield. He's going to protect the league at all costs. And one of the things that I brought up is that, let's call it what it is. The league is over 65% black, just like the NBA was over 70% black. Once upon a time, it was on tape delay. In order to turn it into a multi-billion-dollar establishment, you have to ingratiate the sport with the public, the masses. White folks make up 66% of the American population. You can't make the sport popular. You can't make any sport in America popular if you alienate folks. And when white folks see black folks who happen to be young athletes, and the perception is they're out of control and they're lawless, they're not going to patronize your product. If they don't patronize your product, it will compromise your dollars and your bottom line. If it does that, you don't have the kind of thriving business that the NFL has. So the NFL's perception is, hey, we got to reel this stuff in. Now, that sounds incredibly unfair, because it ain't like it's only black folks that's doing stuff wrong. Let me be clear. But we are the ones in the news. And when that happens, it's inescapable what the league is going to do to send a message. James, it just is.
And when Goodell first came in, there were a lot of these same guys who were saying, yeah, he's for law and order. Yeah, we support him. He's for law and order. But when the stars start getting in trouble, Brady and guys like that, then everybody say, hold it, wait a minute. So, I mean, you can't have both ways. You can't say on the one hand he's law and order, he's got to do this, but on the other hand, when he starts going after stars, everybody has a problem.
Well, listen, and by the way, I appreciate that point you brought up, because guess what? Goodell is going after whomever. Goodell suspended Ben Roethlisberger for 4 games. There was no arrest, no indictment. He went after Tom Brady, got him suspended for 4 games. That was for deflated footballs. So you know if he's going to do that with them, he's damn sure going to deal with brothers that get themselves in trouble, you know, in terms of violence. And that's just no escaping it. James, I got to go. I appreciate the call, 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. I hate bringing it up, but it's the reality. It's inescapable. I'm just giving facts. If there was a way around it, trust me, I'm interested in hearing it. But I don't know how we can wiggle our way around that reality. More to Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute. Remember, Mr. Trotter himself, NFL analyst and insider reporter for ESPN. He'll be on with us shortly. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. My honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line, insider, reporter, analyst for ESPN. Mr. Jim Trotter's on the line with us right now. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm fine, Stephen A. How are you?
Always good to talk to you, my man. Always good to talk to you. Let's get right to it. You've been all over this situation with Ezekiel Elliott and what has transpired. Where are we now? We read the reports. We've heard what happened. How are you viewing this any differently than how we may have looked at it upon hearing that Ezekiel Elliott would be suspended for 6 games? How are you looking at it any differently now compared to back then, Jim?
Oh, extremely differently. I mean, the thing is, look, we all knew when the suspension came down, we had heard from the NFL, and that's why I said to you at that time, based on the NFL evidence as presented, the steps that it took appeared to be correct and logical. But now we've heard the other side. And the fact that the commissioner would not even speak to the lead investigator in this case, who happens to be, by the way, the only person who has spoken to the accuser and spoke to her 6 different times, the fact that the commissioner would not even speak to the lead investigator, to me, raises a lot of red flags in this case. And look, let's be honest here. If you look at it right now, it looks like the league is trying to make a makeup call for Josh Brown. Lisa Friel got Josh Brown wrong. And a lot of people in the league office and the football operations department were upset about that, and my understanding is that she was somewhat shook by that.
Hold on, Jim. Just for my listeners, for the purposes of my listeners, Josh Brown, kicker for the New York Giants. It was revealed that on 20 separate occasions, his wife had informed authorities that there was a domestic violence issue involving this man. Or I think actually he admitted to that later on in some diary or whatever that he wrote, and it turns out that he was only suspended for 1 game by the league office. Is that what you're alluding to specifically?
Absolutely, and not just that. She made a claim at the Pro Bowl, and the league moved her to a secret hotel away from her then husband, Josh Brown, and he still got only a 1-game suspension. So my understanding is that Lisa Friel was shook by that, the fact that she only gave him a game and what the fallout was. Now along comes Ezekiel Elliott, and I think the league, and clearly Lisa, did not want to appear to be soft again, so they went the extreme opposite direction and gave him 6 games. And then the union files a lawsuit claiming not only that the commissioner did not talk to the lead investigator, but that the advisors, the 4 advisors to the commissioner, were not given the information that Kia Roberts had regarding this case, in that Kia Roberts said Zeke Elliott should not be suspended.
Well, it's interesting
because the accuser was not credible.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I brought up the part about Kia Roberts and how she said the alleged victim, Tiffany Thompson, wasn't credible. But the impression that everybody is having is that one of the 4 advisors to Roger Goodell, at least Lisa Friel, had that information and was able to convey that to Commissioner Roger Goodell. Are you saying that's not true, that she didn't even know about what Kia Roberts was reporting?
That is what is in the lawsuit. So, yes,
Wow.
that is what the union is alleging. Whether that is true or not, only those two sides know, or the league knows, but that is what the union is alleging in the lawsuit, that the 4 advisors were not aware that Kia Roberts recommended no suspension for Ezekiel Elliott. In fact, in the lawsuit, it says that when one of the advisors asked Lisa Friel about Kia Roberts, Lisa Friel did not address that. Lisa Friel addressed the fact that she found, meaning Lisa Friel, only one of the claims by the accuser was not credible.
We're talking to Jim Trotter right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. So with that being said, because I was of the mindset that even if Lisa Friel did know, even if one of those 4 advisors, female advisors to Roger Goodell on domestic violence issues, did know about Kia Roberts' specific assertions, the bottom line is if I'm Roger Goodell, Jim Trotter, I want to hear from Kia Roberts. I want to speak to her directly. This ain't one of those things where I want a subordinate that I've allocated responsibility to interpret for Kia Roberts something to me. I want to see Kia Roberts. I'm wondering about that with Roger Goodell. Are you?
Oh, absolutely. That's my point here. If you truly want the truth and you want fairness in this process, why would you not speak to the lead investigator, again, who happens to be the only person who spoke to the accuser? Why would you not want to hear from that person directly? It makes no sense. It defies common sense. And that's why the league continues to find itself in this position. And look, Stephen A., let me make this argument to you.
Go ahead.
In the last 2 high-profile domestic violence cases, meaning Josh Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, isn't it interesting that Kia Roberts and Lisa Friel disagreed on both cases? That Kia Roberts felt that Josh Brown should have gotten a stronger suspension, and she also felt that Ezekiel Elliott did not deserve a suspension. And the commissioner sided in both cases with Lisa Friel. Just makes me wonder.
Well, what's the difference between Kia Roberts and Lisa Friel? Can you dissect it for me? I mean, I'm assuming you've met both. You've spoken to both. You have not. What do you know about both Kia Roberts and Lisa Friel?
Kia Roberts works under Lisa Friel,
right,
as it relates to domestic violence. So the ultimate authority rests with Lisa Friel. But I find it interesting that one person, at least from all that we know on the outside, seems to have a better handle on how this should be handled versus the person who is in charge with it.
You know what I find interesting, Jim? I find it interesting that Kia Roberts is a subordinate to Lisa Friel, but we hear about Kia Roberts' position on these matters. Usually you don't hear from somebody on the lower end of the totem pole in terms of how they feel compared to the authoritative figure in their chosen profession. I mean, right now you've got a situation where Kia Roberts answers to Lisa Friel, but somehow, some way, we're aware of what Roberts' position is and how it differs from Friel. Do you find that interesting?
Well, no. From this standpoint, she's the lead investigator.
Got it.
So her opinion is going to come out, especially when you're talking about an arbitration hearing or a lawsuit. So that doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is that those two seem to be at opposite ends of the spectrum as it relates to these last 2 domestic violence cases, and both times the commissioner sided with Lisa Friel. Did not even speak to Kia Roberts in this case.
Wow. Jim Trotter right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What level of culpability, if any at all, do you attach to the Players Association and specifically DeMaurice Smith in this matter?
Look, I heard you earlier, but here's the reality. Of course, the league or the Players Association gave the commissioner this power, without question.
Mm-hmm.
But the Players Association made a strategic decision that each year may be only a handful of players who become involved in these cases. And so the question is, do you address a situation for the larger body or for a handful of, players who are going to get in trouble? And ultimately the decision was made that you were going to address this for the larger body. But having said that, the Players Association still has a responsibility to represent these players, some of whom I would call knuckleheads. You still have to represent those players because it is not about the person, it is about the process. And that is what the union is fighting for on behalf of these players. It's not whether these players are guilty or innocent. It's the process.
But Jim Trotter, I'm not disagreeing with that position. I 1,000% support you on that one. I totally agree with you. My issue, however, is that you've covered this league for many years, certainly more than I have. And you know the difference between labor relations and labor negotiations. And when it comes to labor relations, Roger Goodell and DeMaurice Smith seem on such opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, it's damn near nuclear with these two individuals. And I think to some degree, some of these rulings are tainted by the lack of a relationship that they have with one another. Am I off kilter in saying that?
No, I don't disagree with that. But again, it comes back to this. When we go back to the last labor negotiation, are you going to hold out roughly 1,900 players because of a handful of players? Are you going to keep roughly 1,900 players unemployed or locked out over a personal conduct issue that involves a handful of players? The decision was made not just by DeMaurice Smith. Remember, the player reps had to vote on that collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And all but one team,
Steelers.
All but one official voted in favor of it.
Ryan Clark.
Yes, sir, the Steelers.
That's right. That's right. Jim Trotter right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. So where does Roger Goodell have to go from here in your estimation, based on everything that you've just explained?
Well, right now we're waiting to hear what Harold Henderson is going to rule, what the arbiter is going to rule. If he vacates the suspension, we move on to the season. If he reduces it, Zeke Elliott still has the right to go to court on it. If he does not reduce it, does not vacate it, we're going to court. So that's where we are right now.
Roger Goodell and his stewardship over this league, regardless of how questionable it may be in a lot of people's minds. I mean, this dude is, he's about to be on board through, at least up until 2024. Are you surprised at all that the owners continue to support him in light of some of these questionable decisions that have been made?
No, not at all. I mean, they've made a lot of money under his tenureship. And the other thing is, Stephen A., this doesn't get talked about, but it's a reality. People say, well, the owners are going to be upset after this case and they're going to kick Roger out. No, there are a number of owners who supported Roger Goodell in the league and going after the Cowboys. Look, NFL ownership is very petty in a lot of ways, and there are a number of owners who wanted to see the Cowboys be disciplined, a number of owners who do not necessarily like Jerry Jones. There are owners who mock Jerry Jones going into the Hall of Fame. So to think that they are now going to turn around and say, boy, Roger, we're really upset that you went after the Cowboys and Jerry Jones on this, you got to go. That's not going to happen.
Jim Trotter, continue the excellent work, my man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
No problem.
Give Stephen A. piece of your mind.
He is sorry.
Call him weekdays from 1 till 3 Eastern.
I mean, just trash.
At 866-729-3776.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Connor in Long Island. Let's get to it. What's going on?
Hey, Stephen A. I like you. I respect you. But I think you got some nerve turning this into a race thing. You know, instead of us coming together against domestic violence, you're once again creating a divide between white and black, which has nothing to do with this, and all your millions of viewers listening and listening to you say this stuff, creating something about nothing.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there. First of all, you're wrong. Number one. And I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Because you're pointing out the facts, and I'm giving you the facts. I'm not giving you emotion, and I'm not giving you race. Tom Brady is white. Roger Goodell went after him. Ben Roethlisberger got 4 games. Roger Goodell went after him. It's not about that. What I was pointing to when I mentioned it, and I'm assuming you're bringing up what I brought up on First Take this morning, when I highlighted that, I'm simply pointing to this reality. 66% of the American population is white. When you have young individuals who happen to be African American, if they come across as if they're acting up in certain ways, it could affect your bottom line because it could disincentivize somebody to patronize your product. And as a result, if you are the commissioner of a league, you're going to pay attention to that. I'm giving you fact, and I can prove it. Because when the NBA had their issue, Connor, back in the 80s, and Commissioner David Stern took over, and it was drug-infested, and it was rife with violence, with Hollins running away from Tree Rollins into the stands during the game after punching him in the back of the head and stuff like that, to the turn of the century, when Ron Artest ran into the stands at the Palace in Auburn Hills, and the NBA had to make a case that this is something that we can control and we're not going to tolerate such and such. Then all of a sudden a dress code came into play and the fines were stiffer and all of this other stuff, because you have to give the impression that there is always order. If you don't do that, it will compromise your bottom line. The history of sports proves that I'm right, and that is a fact. Now, whether you want me to bring it up or not because it makes you uncomfortable is of no consequence to me. If it's true, and it happens to be the truth.
I'm sick of hearing guys like you put this into everybody.
Well, I'm just saying to you, but you can be sick of it all you want to. You didn't tell me it was false. You just don't want to hear it, but it's not false. Now, if you tell me that you don't want to hear it, I can respect that, Connor. I truly could, because guess what? Contrary to what you want to believe, I don't want to talk about it. But don't tell me it's false, because it's not false. Now, you could say you don't want to hear it, and I can respect that. I'm not even mad at you about that. Matter of fact, I agree with you about it. You're right. I wish we never had to bring it up, but it's fact.
What do you think with all the commercials that NFL had last year, all about domestic violence, whoever it was this year, whether it was Eli Manning, whether it was Stafford, whoever it was going to get a suspension longer than they should have. The NFL
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Should Josh Brown have got more than one game?
Yes, but Josh Brown's never playing in the NFL.
Hold on, stop right there. Stop right. No. Answer my question. Should he have gotten more than one game, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, right? You said yes, right?
Yes.
Why wasn't it ever discussed ad nauseum why he didn't get more than one game?
Because Josh Brown is a kicker and Ezekiel.
Oh, really? So that's what it is? So that's all it is? Yeah. That's all it is? It's the fact that he's a kicker. The fact that, hold on, wait a minute. Because the women out there that have been really on us about bringing attention to issues of domestic violence, they didn't give a damn that he was a kicker. They gave a damn about the domestic violence. So now you're telling me it's because he was a kicker, when in fact that's not the issue. The issue is that acts of domestic violence were exacted by an individual wearing an NFL uniform. He was wearing an NFL uniform, and somehow, some way, he only got one game. But you're going to tell me it wasn't discussed because he was just a kicker. Okay, you're entitled to your opinion. Have a nice day. Got to get on out of here for hour number 1. We'll be back in hour number 2. Didn't mean to cut Connor off. It's just that we got a hard break.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
What if I told you that even ordinary people can be on top of the world?
The first attempt on the North Pole by a team of women gets underway today.
The epic adventure will take them over 1,000 kilometers of hazardous sea ice.
It's thousands of miles of ice and nobody.
And so I found myself walking into this water and then sinking up to my neck.
I honestly thought I was going to die in the Arctic.
The all-new 30 for 30 podcast. Subscribe now on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts.
30 for 30 podcast is presented by Mini. We're finding the best sports stories for you right now. And to do that, we're behind the wheel of the new Mini Countryman, the biggest Mini yet.
Please proceed to the highlighted route.
To find great sports stories, you have to get out into the world and follow your instincts. That's where the new Mini Countryman's all-wheel drive comes in handy. With all 4, we can chase down a story in the city, the country, and most places in between. No matter what story you're chasing, the new Mini Countryman will help you find it. It's available now, and so are 30 for 30 podcasts.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm going to address this once and for all because it's important. And I'm going to preface my comments by saying, Connor in Long Island, I hope he's still listening. I do not want one single caller to call up here insulting Connor. Connor was not wrong. Conor had every right to feel what he feels. I'm assuming, I did not ask, but I am assuming he is a white individual. I am assuming that he is tired of these kind of subjects. I am assuming that he just wants to watch his sports. And I'm assuming that, obviously, I don't have to assume because he said so, it disgusted him that race is entered as a part of the equation. I want to repeat myself. I don't want anybody calling up to insult or denigrate Conor from Long Island in any way. Look, I am a black man. I happen to believe that for the most part, there are exceptions, white supremacy and things of that nature. No, there's no reason for that. But barring stuff like that, I don't happen to believe that white folks are wrong or racist or anything like that just because they disagree with me. Just like black folks have a right to feel the way that we feel, so do white folks, so do Latinos, so does Asian Americans and beyond. That's what makes us who we are in terms of the greatest country in the world, because we're not monolithic in our thinking and our views about everything. We're expansive. We're inclusionary. It's one of the reasons why we have a problem with some of the vibes that our president has given off since taking office, actually before taking office, because it's antithetical to everything that has made this country great as far as we're concerned. So Conor is not wrong. My issue with Conor is not that he's wrong. My issue with him is that there's a reality that you have to embrace even when it's uncomfortable. During the break, my producers and I were talking because one of my producers sided with some degree with Conor. And he needed me to explain further and elaborate more extensively on why I felt the way that I felt by bringing up an Andrew Luck comparison. It's one of my producers. His name is Jonathan Winthrop. He happens to be white. He happens to be a phenomenal producer, a great young man and a great friend. And guess what? If a black person out there wanted his job, no, damn it, you can't have it because I'm keeping him. Get over it. But understand his point. This is the reason why it's important to have diversity. Because like Conor, he didn't quite get what I was saying. Because he asked a question about Andrew Luck. Are you saying that if it were Andrew Luck as opposed to Ezekiel Elliott or somebody, it would be treated differently? I said no. The NFL would still do its job. And they do the job that they've been doing because they've got a public to answer to. The difference is the level of pressure to address the situation would be different with Andrew Luck than it would be with an Ezekiel Elliott. Or dare I say a Dak Prescott or somebody like that. Because in this society, as I have articulated on many, many occasions, in a world of corporate America, history has shown us that there is this penchant, this insatiable appetite. When it's white on white or something like that, let's exploit it. Let's make as much money as we can. Let's really ride this wave and push the pedal to the metal and go for it. But when it comes to African Americans, the issue appears to be more about control. Well, let's make sure we can trust this person. Let's make sure we can reel them in. Let's make sure that they're going to be aligned with our thinking and we can control them. Half the time, I don't like it. It's offensive to me. The other half of the time, I completely understand it. Because when your bottom line has the potential to be affected and you're making X amount of dollars and those dollars are coming from the masses and the masses happen to be, for the most part, on the white side of the fence, guess what? If you want mass appeal, you're going to cater to the masses and hope that others follow. It's logical. And it's been proven throughout history that that has been exercised. Baseball and national pastime. The proliferation of the magnitude of that is the National Basketball Association and how it's become a global iconic brand. It wasn't just with Commissioner Stern taking over a league that was on tape delay and ridding itself of an unsavory element while showing Madison Avenue and beyond that we indeed have control over our brand, our product, etc. But it's also what enabled the NBA to go global. And even when it went global, in a 19-year-old limit, well, you got to be 19 years of age or at least a year removed from college. But if you're in Europe, you can come over. Well, look at the European players that come over. Do they look more like Tony Parker or do they look more like Manu Ginobili and Dirk Nowitzki? It's not an accident. Then you transition to the NFL. And what are we talking about here? $14 billion a year in revenue, projected to be $18 billion shortly. By the year 2027, according to the NFL and Roger Goodell, it could escalate as high as $25 billion a year. You think they're going to let anybody compromise this product, this brand? And regardless of what the truth is, regardless of the fact that there may be numerous players who happen to be white that are committing domestic violence like Josh Brown, that are getting themselves in some kind of trouble. When we're talking about weed, who do we usually see? Is it not African Americans? When we've been talking about domestic violence or criminal activity, from Ray Caruth you got him. You got Michael Vick in the dogfighting scandal. You got Greg Hardy, Ray McDonald, Ray Rice. Who we talking about? Again, I'm not talking truth. I'm talking perception. I'm talking how things look. I'm talking about the way things appear and how it can ultimately impact your bottom line. There's no escaping this. Why do you think I'm on the air raising holy hell? It's not because black folks don't know how to act. It's because we do know how to act. And we are lawful. And we do obey the law. And we do fight incredible obstacles and leapfrog and overcome and persevere and withstand. We do it all. But a few knuckleheads act up. And all of a sudden, our entire community is affected. Why is our entire community affected? Because the actions of the few are allowed to give the impression that it defines the many. And as a result, you have dudes like Roger Goodell and others on their perches in league offices lamenting the fact that this is something they have to fend off. This is why I like Adam Silver so much. It's why no matter how many times I've been cussed out and a man has gone off on me, I absolutely love me some David Stern. Because when it was time to defend those athletes on Capitol Hill, David Stern went up there and did it in front of congressional and Senate figures and challenged anybody to question the legitimacy, the authenticity of this brand that is the NBA and what it did to uplift itself in communities throughout this nation. But he still had to go up there on Capitol Hill and do it, didn't he? David Stern and the NBA didn't have anything to do with PED use, steroid use, that pervaded Major League Baseball. That was all on Major League Baseball and their arrogance and their refusal to address the situation for decades until Commissioner Bud Selig forced their hand and ultimately coaxed Congress to get involved. Nobody said a word. But somehow, some way, because Major League Baseball had to go to Capitol Hill, they summoned the NBA there too. Open your eyes. We all know what time it is. Times have gotten better. We've evolved and progressed as a society. But you can't sit up there and lament the behavior of a president, the actions that his behavior may provoke in terms of how it emboldens other people, wonder about the divide that exists within our country, and then I bring it up from a business perspective directly related to sports, and somehow it offends you. Connor from Long Island ain't wrong in expressing his frustration. He's absolutely right, because he's probably a good dude that just wants to watch his sports. And he's not wrong for feeling that way. But he is wrong if he's acting like he has a choice, because the world we live in won't give us one. It continuously demands that we deal with these challenges, because it continuously reminds us, no matter how far we've progressed, we have such a long way to go. It is just the reality, not just of being black in America, but of being in an America that refuses to fully address its problem with blackness.
Catch the Stephen A. Smith Show live on 98.7 ESPN New York, ESPN LA 710, and Sirius XM Channel 80.
You just can't make this stuff up.
Weekdays from 1 till 3 Eastern.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shades.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
John in Bergen County, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, John?
Hi, Stephen A. Thanks for taking the call. I don't always agree with what you have to say, but because you always talk about things in a way that make me think about things differently, I always listen to you, and that's what I think talk radio is all about.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
What I wanted to address was the question you put forward about why we're always talking more about Roger Goodell than we are about the players who are involved in these kinds of incidents.
Okay.
And I think it's because, by and large, the media is always victimizing the perpetrator of crimes and highlighting how they're treated unfairly by the process, and maybe because of the circumstance society put them in, they're really the victim, but we're not focused on the young woman that Ezekiel Elliott was abusing for many months, allegedly. I don't know if it's true or not. And in all these cases, we get so caught up in the player and the team, and we lose focus about condemning domestic violence. And I think in this case, a lot of the media is just focused on making this Ezekiel Elliott incident a microcosm of a broader issue. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
You're probably right, but let me turn that around and ask you this question. How do you feel about the fact that the lead investigator in this situation called for Ezekiel Elliott not to receive a suspension because the alleged victim in question wasn't credible? But she answers to Lisa Friel, one of the individuals that gets to consult Roger Goodell and advise him on these matters. And, Lisa Friel is essentially her boss, and they disagree with each other. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm not going to sit here and say Ezekiel Elliott is guilty or innocent, because I can't do that. And clearly, even people involved.
No. I'm not asking. Hold on. I didn't mean to imply that I'm asking you that. I want to know your opinion about the lead investigator having one opinion, but the woman directly advising Roger Goodell, who happens to be that lead investigator's boss, doesn't have that opinion. What do you make of that is what I'm asking. It's just a question about that.
I think it reinforces the fact that Roger Goodell just handles these cases terribly, and I don't think he'll ever improve. because we see it time after time with every kind of player that he just appears to botch these things and not do, things that make common sense that would put these questions to bed before they even arose.
Got you. That's a great answer, John. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Mike in Denver, you're live with Stephen A. What's up, big baby? How are you?
What's happening, man?
All right, talk to me, man. You're live on the air. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I was just chiming in on the executive thing, Stephen A.
Go ahead.
Man, Roger Goodell, he done it again, man. This is just a total travesty, It's just, he just got Lisa Farrell and the other lady there just to make it look good, What's the sense of having them there if you're not going to take what they say in consideration,
Well, it seems to me like they gave him the recommendation and he listened to their recommendation more than he listened to the person who was the lead investigator. The lead investigator didn't even get an opportunity to talk to Goodell. That's what's surprising about that.
Right. So that raises the question, is Roger Goodell, once again, just doing what he want to do to whoever he want to do it? Do you see it that kind of way? Yeah,
maybe so. Maybe so. We'll see. We'll see.
And that's how I look at it. Well, man, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. But, I like listening to you. And Fatty told me to tell you hello, man.
Tell him I said what's up, man. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate the call as always. Let's go to Matt in California. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, good morning, Stephen A. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem with LeVar running his mouth about how big baller he is or how great his children are. We'll soon find out how great the Ball family really is. What I do have a problem is LeVar running his mouth about how much his brand shoes cost. And if you can afford it, that's great. And if you can, you're not a big baller. Now, me, as a customer, as a buyer, that kind of insults me because the reason is we buy the product and we don't know what we're buying. We don't know if Lonzo is going to be a great athlete. I mean, we know what his stats in college, but as a professional, is he going to be as good as the family says that he's going to be? I mean, he could be a Laker for a year, 2 years, and then, we buy him this product. We don't know how great he is. And it's insulting because you're pricing your product at 400%, and it's about $500 for a pair of shoes. And then you got these shoes like Kobe Bryant, 11s, and these LeBrons are like a quarter of the price.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why are you insulted? You don't have to buy it.
That's very true. We don't have to buy it. But we as the customers, well, I guess we don't have to buy it. But
He's not forcing anything upon you. He's giving you an indication of what he thinks his product is worth. And that's where he's coming from. You don't have to co-sign it.
Now, in your opinion, do you think that his price is reasonable?
Absolutely not. I think it's far excessive. And I don't like the fact that his son is associated with such a thing. But you know something? In the sport of tennis, you got 16-year-old phenoms. Golf, the same thing. You've got athletes that are able to make money at age 18 years of age. You got the NCAA who hide behind the title of amateurism when, in fact, it's big business. Everybody seems to be making money. I can't fault the man for trying to make his. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's see.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I guess we'll see. We'll see. Thank you, Stephen A. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
Listen, shoes ain't always based on how a player plays. One would like to believe that, but there's a lot of shoe brands that don't really take off. Everybody ain't the Jordan brand, for example. Just want to throw that out there. Let's go to, what? Give me a second, because I got a few callers on the line that I definitely know I'm going to want to talk to. So let's take a break. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show. Back with more in a minute on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Let's go to George in Newark. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. George, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well, Stephen A. And I wanted to thank you for how you're covering this whole situation with Ezekiel Elliott and the comparison you made with Josh Brown.
No problem.
I'm a Giants fan. I'm in the state of New Jersey, and I was really not happy at all. I didn't think one game covered it, especially because it was pretty blatant from what I could tell. But I want to thank you for it, because I think some people don't see, like, I've been kind of on a journey trying to keep myself, behind trying to step away from the judgments that we pass as society and stuff. And I just see all these subtleties, and I'm raising two girls, and I don't want to get into that too much, but like even the subtleties in some of the language you use towards women. And I just feel like, sometimes people don't get it, not because they don't want to, not because they really can. It's just they haven't found the right way to step away from it. And I feel like the way you've been presenting it can hopefully provide them a different perspective to really understand the things and all the facts that you're presenting, and all the cases with all the biases that just seem pretty prevalent in the sports and society as a whole.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate your words. Thank you. Let's go to Joe in Maryland. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Stephen A. Thanks for taking the call. Again, I also very much appreciate the way that you are covering the domestic violence subject, be it Ezekiel Elliott or whomever else. The issue I have with what is going on with him, and it's in general, and it's a Goodell problem, is he seems to be just arbitrary in what he does. How he, be it Deflategate to Josh Brown to Ezekiel Elliott, there just doesn't seem to be any consistency. And what consistency there is, I don't know that it makes sense, the way he goes about handing these judgments down.
Well, a lot of people don't know that about Roger Goodell, but what do you suppose they do? I mean, he's got a 10-year collective bargaining agreement. He's got complete power, judge, jury, executioner, appellate judge, everything. I mean, he's got everything at his disposal. Considering that reality, what would you hope that he would do? Because guys like my man Max Kellerman are talking about how it's working against the interests of the NFL for them to keep the power that they have. I don't know people who are in positions of power who surrender it. I just don't know who those people are.
Well, I don't either, but the thing that kind of comes to my mind is I have to wonder, how far does he get to go in this kind of arbitrage before the owners say, look, we're sick of you? I mean, is it going to take the ratings going into the tank?
I think it's going to take
reason?
I think it's going to take them losing money.
Well, that's really sad, and I appreciate the way that you tend to cover, the difference between a sports issue and a societal issue. Not to just blow smoke, but there are very few sports reporters that I can stand talking about these larger issues. But I appreciate the even keel you keep with this. But it's just really sad, and it's really pathetic the way he is just arbitrary, and it just undermines. Whenever anyone has to try and address, here's a ruling that Goodell's made, how do you take anything he does seriously when he's so arbitrary?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because that might be the ultimate crime of Goodell in the end, the fact that he appears to be arbitrary and inconsistent. If you just have one set policy, you know what? This has nothing to do with whether Ezekiel Elliott committed acts of domestic violence or not. You know what? He impugned the integrity of the league by having us in the news all of this time for him being involved with such an incident. And because of that, we're suspending you for 6 games. And for those out there who think that's an unreasonable position to take, let me ask you this. Did you have a problem when they pulled Adrian Peterson off the field for the last 15 games of the season last year because of the whole child abuse scandal? But they put him on a commissioner's exempt list and paid him? If you can get pulled off the field and still be allowed to pay, to get paid, right? How come you can't be suspended for 6 games for being involved with domestic violence? I don't think that it's right just to punish somebody just because they were accused. But if you have the right to do some of the things that they've already done with guys, why not go that far? That's all I'm saying. Appreciate the call, Joe. Thank you. Glenn in West Virginia, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Glenn, good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Good. Hey, we've spoke a couple times actually, but I grew up in southern West Virginia, so you can imagine there was a little bit of racism that went on, to say the least.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
But, you know what I mean? And I'm a white as I can be.
Gotcha.
But I think one of the difficult things with race is that no one's born a racist, no one's born a sexist. They learn that behavior.
Correct.
But being an athlete and playing high school sports and then going on to play football in college, I have exposure that other kids weren't, that they didn't get. So I learned that there were a lot of white guys I didn't like. There were a lot of black guys I didn't like. There were a lot of everything, and there were a lot of ones I liked and vice versa. But I learned that liking someone or not liking someone because they were, not because of the color of their skin. But a lot of kids grow up and make jokes about stuff, but they still have a picture of Emmitt Smith on their wall.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have the exposure that sports allows you to get past that. So then they grow up and continually do that. And then when they get older, that's all they've been exposed to. And it just makes it really difficult to educate people once they've gotten past that. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense, but regardless of its difficulties, we still have to do it if we wish for a better society and a better place.
100% agree. I'm just saying that's what makes the difficulty of it. It's sad that it takes that, but it's a tough situation. It really is.
No question. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. Tijo in Montreal, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, man?
Yeah, what's up, Stephen A., man? I'm a big fan of y'all's, man. I don't always agree with y'all, but I think, man, I love your passion, man. What's up?
Thank you. Go ahead, man. I appreciate you calling into the show. Talk to me.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that I think domestic violence is wrong. So I want to start off with that. But I still think that the NFL is on a very, very slippery slope. And let me tell you why. When it comes to the Ray Rice situation, the Greg Hardy situation, both those guys went to court and were either pleaded guilty or were found guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel Elliott didn't even made it to court. So my problem is that
Ray Rice never had to go to court. I mean, he had the video that counted against him. But go ahead.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, what is it going to take for the league to punish somebody? Is it just going to take somebody to accuse them, and then they're going to be punished for 6 games? To me, I think it doesn't make any sense. And that's why I think that, to be honest with you, when the negotiations comes down to, they got to have an independent arbitrator.
Well, they once had one. They once had one, and the league got the Players Association to get rid of it. That kind of stuff is called the special master, where you have an independent individual that oversees the collective bargaining agreement, but they're appointed by the courts. So as a result, you had this independent arm that would interpret the CBA, on behalf of the courts, so that way one side or the other couldn't sit up there and allude to such flagrant favoritism one way or the other. And that's how you had a fair and equitable system or something close to it. And in the last couple of collective bargaining agreements, the NFL got the Players Association to forfeit that and to bestow that power upon Roger Goodell, which is why the NFL ain't trying to give it back.
Yeah, that's right. But all I want to say is, at the end of the day, what I think happened in the Ezekiel, and I guess we'll know in the coming weeks or coming days, I think the NFL, they would have rather be wronged in the sense that they gave her too harsh of a punishment than be wrong in the sense that they gave a too lenient punishment.
Got it.
In the sense that what they give.
Got you, Tijo. I got to go to break. I appreciate your point. I get your point. I know exactly what you're saying. I hear where you're coming from.
Want to be a part of the show? Hit Stephen A. up weekdays from 1 to 3 Eastern at 866-729-3776.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
I didn't talk about Magic and the Lakers because I talked about it yesterday because I thought it was completely bogus that the Lakers had to pay a $500,000 fine. Yes, Rob Pelinka shouldn't have talked to the agent about Paul George or whatever it is. I mean, stop it. Please, agents talk to GMs all the time. all the time. It's an absolute joke. And as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't have been a fine at all. But because it was just a fine, so be it. In terms of the Rams and Aaron Donald, get it together. He's one of the best players in the game. You take care of far less talented individuals than him. You should take care of him. You should be happy somebody like him wants to be on your team. They need to take care of it. Outside of that, Dodgers' recent losing streak aside, I'm not worried about them. They just better win the World Series. Verlander getting picked up by the Astros. You meet the Astros in the World Series, it could be a problem. It could be a problem. But we'll see what happens then. Got to get there first. Should get there, unless the Cubs all of a sudden make sometimes a resurgence, and all of a sudden they playing lights out. Outside of that, it was supposed to come down to the Nationals and the Dodgers, but the Nationals, Bryce Harper can't even run yet, so. And, of course, with the Yankees, CC Sabathia cussing out the Boston Red Sox because they tried to bunt on him in the first inning. I thought he completely overreacted. But I loved the fact that he had that temper tantrum because he got an ERA a little over 1 against them. And he's 8-0, undefeated, when pitching the next day following the Yankees' loss this season. CC Sabathia, 37 years old, CC Sabathia, with no pop in his pitches any longer. Can't throw 97-mile-per-hour fastballs. But whatever he's doing is good enough. Bottom line. Back to the phones we go. Chris in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Chris, go ahead.
Real quick, Stephen A. I just want to touch on the brilliant and what you said regarding Connor and Long Island, what you said. And this is why I admire when you touch on topics, because you see it from both sides. And basically what I wanted to say is I understand where Connor's coming from. He was not wrong, but what Connor has to understand is that African Americans in society now, with money, without money, iconic figures, we're under a microscope. A lot of people don't realize that. Regardless of your stature, you're under a microscope. So you have to conduct yourself in a way that you're not in the news for all the wrong reasons. And a lot of these athletes, in my opinion, this is why we fail as African Americans in society, because we don't realize that. We think just because we have the X amount of dollars that we can get away with certain stuff and disobeying the law. And I feel that's where we go wrong. And like I said, you couldn't have said any better. I had nothing to add. I just wanted to touch on that, Stephen A.
Thank you.
That's something that we need to address as African Americans.
I got you. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Let's go to Trey in Missouri. You're live real quick with Stephen A. Go ahead, Trey.
What's going on, Stephen A? Hey, 2 quick things about Hurricane Harvey. I heard you the other day talking about it's okay for them to, I guess, push the game or whatever. Just let the city be known to have them ready to embrace the game, because I was born and raised in Mississippi, and I'm not a Saints fan, but when Hurricane Katrina came through for that Monday night game against Atlanta, I was a Saints fan, and I completely agree with you with that. And with college football officially kicking off tomorrow, I got to ask you, and if you don't say the right conference, I'm gonna say it for you. What's the best conference in the land these days?
Right now, I ain't going to lie to you. It's looking like the Big Ten.
And, come on, man. SEC football will always...
Well, you know why? Because it's Alabama and everybody else. Somebody's got to show me they can compete with Alabama. Then I'll give them love. But until then, I'm not sold on it. I'm sorry. ACC, by the way, I can't ignore them with Florida State and Clemson. Let's not forget about that. But I got to run. Appreciate the call. Patrick in the ATL, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Patrick, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen, I just wanted to talk real quick about Zeke and the NFL. I'm an attorney for a company, and I would say, companies can choose to hold their employees to higher standards. So I disagree with most people that have an issue with them choosing to punish somebody when they haven't been convicted by a court. You can choose to, companies can hold their employees to higher standards. But I think the issue is the lack of consistency. That's what we're talking about. Goodell's not been consistent in anything that he does, and that's the real problem.
You're probably right, Patrick. If he was that way across the board and you knew what was coming no matter what, it would be very little to say about Roger Goodell. So there's a good point on your part, which would mean, however, that, he's inconsistent because he's tried to be lenient in some cases, which is a different discussion for another day. Josh in Kentucky, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Josh, go.
Hey, Stephen, man, what's up?
Go ahead, buddy, real quick. Go ahead.
Real quick. Just want to say thank you for the way you're covering this. domestic violence stuff. Again, I do raise a daughter, so she's only 6 years old, but she's going to grow up and hear a lot about this stuff. And it's nice to have other men, especially in the media, Worldwide Network, who paint a much finer picture with things, go into detail about things rather than just a broad stroke, because you do, whether you believe it or not, do help out in that regard in raising a little one who will hear these opinions one day and hear these thoughts and be able to see, like, oh, hey, not everybody is the same. So just wanted to thank you for how you do handle that, even though, like most, I don't agree with you a lot of times. I'm screaming at the TV on First Take a lot, sure. But I do respect you, man. Love the show. And again, but just really love and respect the way you're handling this. So God bless, man. Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless. Just try to be fair. Just try to be fair-minded. And again, Connor in Long Island, he wasn't wrong. He has a right to feel the way that he feels. I respectfully disagree with some points of it, but there were other valid points that he made. But in the end, it's not about taking sides, and it's not about painting one side as the victim and one side as the villain. It's about talking about the world that we live in. Because on far too many occasions, we're so busy caught up in talking about the way things should be instead of dealing with the way things truly are. And in our society, when you deal with what truly is and the way things truly are, it empowers you to find a path towards a better place. Enjoy y'all weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Until then, enjoy college football.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN